The river that doesn't make a sound. The water is black enough to hide sins. You step into it anyway, because hesitation is louder than armor.
Subscribe to the
Britain
channel,
at
like
night
and share in the
doesn't
comments
feel like
what you
land.
know about these
It
legendary
feels like a
warriors.
mouth,
And now,
wet
let's get back
air,
to the story.
cold breath, the taste of peat and rot, the soft cough of distant owls. Behind you, the campfires are smothered down to embers. Ahead, on the far bank, a line of enemy torches flickers like teeth. The order was simple: cross. No bridge, no boats, no speeches. Just a hand signal from a Roman officer who will not be the one drowning. The first shock is always the same. Cold doesn't hurt at first. It steals. It steals heat, steals calm, steals the lie that you're in control. The water climbs your thighs, your belt, your ribs. It pushes into every seam where leather meets metal, where metal meets skin. You have trained for this since childhood, since the first winter your elders threw you into the Rhine and told you to return with your breath still in you. Since you learned that panic is the fastest way to death, because panic wastes oxygen, and oxygen is the real currency here. Around you, the Batavian line enters the water as one body. Shields tilt, spear points rise. The formation is tight enough that you can smell the man next to you. Wet wool, iron, old sweat, fear disguised as discipline. Somewhere on the far bank, a Briton shouts, and then another. They saw you, and their voices twist because what they're seeing doesn't fit the rules of war. Men don't do this. Men don't walk into rivers in armor and come out ready to kill. But you are not men tonight. Tonight, you are what Rome sends when the map turns into swamp, when the road ends, when the enemy thinks water is safety. Tonight, you are the knife that swims, and the river, cold, silent, patient, accepts you like it has accepted 1,000 before. The island that raised soldiers. Before you were a soldier, you were a child of an island, not the kind of island poets dream about. No palms, no sun, no gentle waves. Your island is a wedge of land in the Rhine Delta where the world is made of reeds, mud, and stubborn horses, where the sky sits low and the water never fully leaves you alone. Tacitus wrote that the Batavi lived in an island fork of the Rhine, born from upheaval and hardened by geography. He also wrote something that sounds like praise until you hear the chains inside it. The Batavian weren't insulted with taxes and tribute. They paid Rome with bodies, with men and arms. That arrangement did two things. First, it made you valuable. Second, it made you replaceable. Because when a people becomes a resource, they stop being a people in the eyes of an empire. They become inventory. Batavian boys grew up with water as a teacher. You learned currents the way other children learned letters. You learned the lie of shallow water, how it can drop without warning. You learned to hold your breath until your lungs burned and your thoughts started bargaining. The island forged a certain kind of psychology, calm under pressure, comfort in discomfort, an instinct for teamwork because solo heroes die in marshes. And over all of it hung the old gods, names changing depending on who's speaking, but the same hunger underneath. The river itself was not just a thing, it was a presence. It watched, it took payment. It remembered. So when Rome came offering silver, iron, and citizenship at the end of service, it wasn't just a job contract, it was destiny with a signature.
The recruiter's net. The recruiter doesn't look like a monster.
That's the trick. He looks like a bored Roman clerk with dusty sandals, a wax tablet, and a cheap ring that imitates gold. He arrives with a small escort, enough to feel official, not enough to feel like an invasion. But behind him are men from your own people, veterans with Roman belts, Batavian faces, and eyes that have learned to stop flinching. They watch you the way hunters watch a promising animal. You are not asked, "Do you want to serve?" You are asked, "Can you?" The selection is brutal because it has to be. Rome doesn't need more bodies. Rome needs reliability under chaos. The Batavian cohorts are expected to do what others can't. Forced marches through floodplain, night attacks, river crossings under fire, first into swamps, last out of ambushes. So they test what matters. Breath discipline, not merely holding your breath, but holding your mind. The body can endure more than the brain can tolerate. The brain is what breaks first. Water competence. You swim with weight, with shield, with weapon. You learn to keep formation when instincts scream, separate, survive. Then violence under command. Not rage, control. Rage is noisy, control is efficient. Then comes the moment that changes you more than the tests, the oath. Rome calls it the sacramentum, an agreement to obey, to endure, to place the unit above the self. But for a Batavian recruit, there's a second oath, unspoken but understood. You will not shame the river that raised you. You will not be the one who panics. You will not be the weak link that costs brothers their breath. This is how elite units are built psychologically, not through motivation, but through identity traps. Once you are labeled Batavian, you cannot afford to be ordinary. That's not pride, that's pressure. And pressure applied long enough turns people into tools. Water forges better than fire. A legionary learns to march. A Batavian learns to move where marching is impossible. Training doesn't begin with weapons, it begins with discomfort. You run until your legs stop arguing and start obeying. You carry weight through mud that tries to steal your boots. You learn how wet cold crawls into bone, and you learn the only real answer to it: keep moving. Then the water training begins, and it is not heroic. It is repetitive, ugly, exhausting. You enter rivers in daylight, then at dusk, then at night, until darkness stops feeling like blindness and starts feeling like another terrain. You practice gripping a shield so it doesn't turn into a sail that spins you sideways. You learn to keep spear points up so you don't stab your own line in the churn. The most important drill isn't swimming, it's staying together. Formation in water is a psychological war. Your nervous system screams to isolate, to reduce drag, to claim space. The unit demands the opposite: compress, align, match pace. Rome didn't accidentally stumble into Batavian excellence. It exploited a culture that already lived with water and then industrialized it. Tacitus describes Batavian cavalry as excellent in swimming, crossing the Rhine with arms and horses without breaking formation. That line, without breaking formation, isn't a trivia fact, it's a doctrine. It means we do not become individuals even when drowning is possible. That's how fear becomes a weapon, because an enemy can predict a man, but a disciplined mass, a body that moves like one creature, that looks supernatural, and superstition is a battlefield multiplier.
How they lived, the brotherhood that doesn't let you leave. In Britain, life is a loop. Work, drill, watch. Work, drill, watch. The fort is a rectangle of Roman certainty hammered into a landscape that hates certainty. The walls are timber and earth. The ditches are deep. The gates are narrow. Inside, order, routine, rules. Batavians often served as auxiliaries. Support troops, yes, but support is a polite word for the people who do the lethal work that keeps the legion safe. The legion is the anvil. The auxiliaries are the hammer. You eat grain, meat when there is meat, and whatever can be taken from local land. You sleep in shared barracks, packed close in winter like animals. Privacy doesn't exist. That's on purpose. Elite cohesion isn't built through friendship. It's built through unavoidable intimacy. Shared discomfort, shared shame, shared secrets, shared violence. You learn men's breathing patterns the way you learned currents back home. You know who talks in his sleep, who hoards food, who prays, who laughs too loudly because silence scares him. Discipline is constant. The Roman centurion's vine staff doesn't care that you're elite. In fact, it cares more because elite units cannot afford cracks. And yet, inside this pressure cooker, something fierce grows. A Batavian unit becomes a family that punishes weakness and protects its own, often in the same breath. The more dangerous the work, the more sacred the bond, because your brain needs to believe the suffering has meaning. Without meaning, you can't endure. So the unit becomes meaning. The Medway, when water became a door. The first time the Britons truly feared you was not because of your swords. It was because of their assumptions collapsing. In AD 43, during the Roman invasion, the river Medway looked like safety to the defenders, an obstacle that would slow iron and break momentum. Cassius Dio describes how Roman commanders sent across Germans who were accustomed to swim through swift streams in full armor, catching the enemy off guard on the far bank. Imagine being a Briton that day. You're watching the water, expecting hesitation, rafts, delay. You're thinking in normal war terms. Men are heavy, armor sinks, rivers protect. And then the river betrays you. Shapes emerge in the water, shields glinting, spear points rising, heads low like wolves. They don't splash like desperate swimmers. They move with purpose. They hit the bank not gasping, not dragging, but ready to fight immediately. That's the real shock. They come out prepared to fight immediately. The crossing didn't exhaust them, it positioned them. And then the damage begins. Not just physical damage, psychological damage. Because once an enemy learns that water is not a barrier, their map changes. Their instincts misfire. Their safe places become traps. Their confidence becomes a liability. Rome understood this, and it kept using you for it. Again and again, the empire took one Batavian talent, swimming, and turned it into a terror brand.
The heavy work. Raids that felt like nightmares. Battles are loud. Raids are intimate. This is where Batavians earned the reputation that made enemies whisper before they fought. You were sent where roads fail. Marsh villages, hill forts hidden by fog, rebel camps nestled behind rivers because no army will cross here. The raid begins long before the first kill. It begins with silence. You move without torches. You use the water itself to hide sound, wading rather than walking on stones. You time the approach with wind so your armor's small noises vanish under reeds and rain. Then comes the moment the human mind hates most, the first scream. Not because it's loud, because it means the unknown has become real. Batavian tactics in raids rely on a cruel truth.
Most defenders break not when they are overpowered, but when they are confused. So you cultivate confusion like a crop. Strike from the side the enemy isn't watching, often the safe side, swamp, stream, ditch. Set small fires behind the camp so the eye turns away from the real threat. Take leaders fast because headless groups panic. Leave survivors on purpose because survivors carry fear faster than messengers. Is it brutal? Yes, but it is also Roman logic. Terror reduces future resistance, and reduced resistance saves Roman blood. Empires justify cruelty with arithmetic. For the men doing it, the psychology is worse. To remain functional, you must narrow your empathy. You must make other people's pain feel like weather, present, unpleasant, irrelevant. That is the hidden cost of being elite. You don't just learn to cross rivers, you learn to cross moral lines and keep walking. He had no fleet, so he used you. One of the most famous examples of Batavian-style warfare isn't just a river crossing, it's a strategic insult. Tacitus recounts Agricola's move against Mona, Anglesey. He had no fleet, no prepared naval plan, so he selected auxiliaries familiar with fords and swimmers from their birth, men able to manage arms and horses in the water, and ordered a sudden plunge into the channel. The enemy, expecting ships, was stunned into fear. That is the essence of elite unit value. You give a commander options that don't exist for other forces. If a legion can only advance where roads and bridges allow, the enemy can predict the campaign. But if a commander has Batavians, now rivers are roads, straits are shortcuts. Impossible becomes a tactical tool. Picture Mona's defenders watching the water, preparing for boats, and instead seeing the channel fill with men. Not a heroic swim race, an organized assault. Weapons kept controlled, horses guided. The crossing itself becomes part of the attack, not a pause before it. The psychological effect is devastating. When an enemy's preparation becomes irrelevant, they experience learned helplessness in real time. Their brain says, "Nothing I do matters." And soldiers who believe nothing matters do not hold a line.
Mons Graupius, when close combat turned ugly. There are battles where the story is written by generals, and there are battles where the story is written by the men in the first rank. At Mons Graupius, Tacitus describes Agricola urging Batavian and Tundrian cohorts into close fighting, and then he gives a detail that reveals exactly what kind of elite these men were. Batavians closed, struck with their shields and disfigured faces, turning the shield itself into a weapon before advancing uphill. That's not clean warfare, that's shock warfare. It tells you something about Batavian combat culture under Rome. One, they weren't just tough, they were trained to end fights fast. Two, they understood that injury isn't only about killing, sometimes it's about breaking the will by breaking the image of the human face. There's a reason face injuries terrify people. A wound to the arm is damage. A wound to the face is a message. You are not safe, not even in your identity. In close combat, Batavians used pressure and crowding, closing distance where large, unwieldy weapons became useless. They turned the enemy's equipment into a disadvantage. They made the fight personal and panicked. You don't win wars only by killing bodies. You win wars by making the enemy's mind quit first. And at Mons Graupius, the Batavian method did exactly that. Their gods, their rituals, their shadow. Rome gave you Latin commands, standardized gear, pay scales, but Rome never fully replaced what you brought from home.
Batavian identity remained a thing, strong enough that Roman authors noticed it, strong enough that Batavian units were often spoken of as a distinct blade in the Roman hand. And identity needs symbols. In the Batavian homeland, there was the cult of Hercules Magusanus, a fusion of Roman Hercules with a local martial god, tied to Batavian self-image and warrior tradition. Archaeological and scholarly work notes practices like depositing weapons at sanctuaries associated with Hercules Magusanus, such as at Empel, connecting martial life to religious offering. To a Roman, that might sound like superstition. To a soldier, it's psychology. A ritual does three crucial things for an elite unit. 1. It frames death as meaningful, so fear becomes manageable. 2. It binds the group. Shared sacred behavior is stronger than shared drinking. And 3. It cleans the mind, a way to carry guilt without collapsing under it. Imagine a veteran returning to the Rhine after years in Britain, after raids, after faces smashed under shields, after screams in fog. He needs a place to put it, so he offers something that mattered, a piece of gear, a blade, a horse fitting, a token of the role that consumed him. Not because the god needs iron, because the man needs to believe the iron meant something. This is the paradox of elite units. The tougher the work, the more the mind craves ritual, because without ritual, the memories rot into madness.
What made them feared, and why it always cost something? If you strip the legend down to bones, the Batavians were feared for 5 reasons. 1. They broke geography. Rivers and marshes stopped being defenses. That rewrites war. 2. They moved as a single organism. Formation in water, discipline under panic. This feels unnatural to enemies. 3. They specialized in hard tasks, the jobs others avoided, night crossings, surprise assaults, raids in terrain that punishes normal troops. 4. They fought to break minds, not just bodies. Shield strikes to faces, sudden attacks from impossible directions, controlled brutality that spread stories. 5. They had an identity strong enough to survive Rome. That identity made them reliable and made them dangerous. But here's the thing legends rarely admit. Being Rome's special forces didn't just make you powerful, it made you used. Rome praised your courage while spending it. Rome admired your swimming while turning it into policy. Rome rewarded veterans with citizenship after long service, but the payment was years of your nervous system living in survival mode. And survival mode, over time, changes a person. It narrows you. It hardens you. It makes peace feel strange, and crowds feel like threats, and silence feel like an ambush. So when you hear stories about Batavian supermen, remember the truth behind every elite unit in history. They are not born monsters. They are built through selection, pressure, ritual, trauma, and brotherhood. And once built, they do what they were built to do. Even when the river is black, even when the night is watching, even when the enemy thinks water is safety. Epilogue. The river remembers. By the time you reach the far bank in Britain, the torches are closer. Arrows hiss over the water like insects. A man to your left gasps, a sharp, ugly sound. The formation tightens instinctively. Shields rise, spear points tilt toward the shore. And then your boots find mud again. For one heartbeat you feel relief, and then the training takes over. No celebration, no pause, no "we made it." Only the next task, finish the work. Because that's what you are now, a Batavian Auxiliary.
Rome's quiet solution, the empire's river-crossing answer to every impossible problem. And somewhere behind you, the water closes, smooth and innocent, erasing footprints like it never happened, like it never swallowed anyone, like it doesn't remember. But the river always remembers, and so do you.